Thank you for joining us today at Brothers of the Word, because, brother, you need the Word. Amen. And I have been in the middle of a series simply entitled Contentment. And this came from a session that my youngest son, George, and we were praying, and I was just thanking God. I said, Lord, I thank you that I am so content, because I was just so happy and just so pleased with life. Even though I got some stuff wrong, I got a whole lot more that's right. And I was just thanking God that I'm so happy, so content. And God began to tell me this is the next series that you will begin preaching on. He said, ask George what each one of the letters of contentment means. And I asked George, and he rattled them off one by one. C was care. O was opinion. N was new. T was time. E excessive. N neighbor. T, totality, M, measure, and last week, E, exception, and today, the letter N. And George said for the letter N, simply the word nothing. Nothing. And I must admit, I was even sitting here on Thursday listening to see Elijah, and I was wondering exactly what am I going to preach on about nothing. And see, Elijah began preaching, and I had just a revelation. And today I'm going to talk to you about 3 types of nothing. See, God can take nothing and make something out of it. I'm going to talk to you today about 3 types of nothing. The first type of nothing is when you can see what the world can't. The world sees nothing. You see God. And often the world will see value where you see void. And see, Elijah was preaching, and he was talking about 2 Kings, beginning at the 6th verse. And I'm going to read that story to you. Now, the king of Syria was at war with Israel. He consulted his advisors, who said, invade at such and such a place. But the prophet sent this message to the king of Israel. Make sure you don't pass through this place, because Syria is invading there. So the king of Israel sent a message to the place the prophet had pointed out, warning it to be on its guard. This happened on several occasions. This made the king of Syria upset. So he summoned his advisors and said to them, one of us must be helping the king of Israel. One of his advisors said, no, my master, O king, the prophet Elisha, who lives in Israel, keeps telling the king of Israel the things you say in your bedroom. Let me just pause right there. God knows what is happening or not happening in your bedroom. Not necessarily. He knows what's happening in the church, but God knows what is happening or not happening in your bedroom. Or whose ever bedroom you may have been in last night. Because some of y'all was in a bedroom last night and it wasn't your bedroom. So he knows what's happening in whatever bedroom or whatever bed you're in. God knows what you are doing in your Sunday best. And he knows what you are doing butt naked. Now, you ought to keep this in mind. Whatever you're doing, you ought to keep this in mind. God knows what I'm doing right now. Whatever you're doing, good or not so good, God knows what you are doing right now. So the king of Syria's advisors told him, Elijah, who lives in Israel, keeps telling the king of Israel the things you say in your bedroom. The king ordered, go find out where he is so I can send some men to capture him. The king was told he is in Dothan. So he sent horses and chariots there, along with a good-sized army. They arrived during the night and surrounded the city. The prophet's attendant got up early in the morning. When he went outside, there was an army surrounding the city, along with horses and chariots. He said to Elijah, oh, no, my master, what will we do? He replied, don't be afraid. for our side outnumbers them. Then Elisha prayed, O Lord, open his eyes so he can see. The Lord opened the servant's eyes, and he saw that the hill was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. As they approached him, Elisha prayed to the Lord, strike these people with blindness. The Lord struck them with blindness as Elisha requested. Then Elisha said to them, this is not the right road or city. Follow me, and I will lead you to the man you're looking for. He's telling the army this. He led them to Samaria. When they entered Samaria, Elisha said, O Lord, open their eyes so they can see. The Lord opened their eyes, and they saw that they were in the middle of Samaria. When the king of Israel saw them, he asked Elijah, should I strike them down, my master? He replied, do not strike them down. You did not capture them with your sword or bow. So what gives you the right to strike them down? Give them some food and water so they can eat and drink and then go back to their master. So he threw a big banquet for them, and they ate and drank. Then he sent them back to their master. After that, no Syrian raiding parties again invaded the land of Israel. Elijah and the angels surrounded the enemy. Now here, Elisha's servant could see nothing but what was in the world. But Elisha could see what God had placed there. See, your spiritual vision will change the way you see the same situation. The only difference was one had a spiritual vision and one had a natural vision, and in the natural, he could see nothing of God. All he saw was the soldiers and the army and the chariots and the bulls and the swords. All he saw was the stuff that could kill him. But once his spiritual eyes were opened, he saw chariots of fire. And he saw more of God's angels and soldiers than the world's angels or soldiers. When you don't have spiritual vision, you can see nothing of God's. But when you have spiritual vision, now let me relate this to some of you all's situations. Some of you all are in what I would call tough situations. You got things that you think are wrong in your world, and all you can see is the enemy. All you can see is your mean boss. All you can see is your bank account running low, where you have to preserve and scrimp and scrape. All you can see is the disease you struggle with in your body. All you can see is a misbehaving spouse. All you can see are errant children. All you can see is all this stuff happening around you, and all this stuff going bad, and all this stuff going wrong. You need to open your eyes sometimes to some stuff. And when you open your eyes, what you will see, or you will see the angelic in the middle of that situation working for your benefit. And you will see how your pain helps you to become stronger. You will see how your struggles cause you to grow. Have you ever noticed a child who's just brought up with a silver spoon in their mouth and how spoiled and weak they are? You ever notice that? But you get somebody that done come through some struggles. Or they stuffed it up. The spoiled child look at it and just about to tear to pieces. They look at it, there ain't nothing. Because they have gone through some things. God is taking some of your situations to strengthen you, to humble you, to bring you closer. You know, some of y'all wouldn't even pray if you didn't have problems. You had plenty of money in the bank, feeling good, looking good, just done spent $500 on your hair. Some of y'all, you wouldn't even pray if you did not have problems. So when you look at things with a spiritual view, God has told me, look, boy, some of the problems I have put into your world, they're not problems, they're classes. And you haven't passed the class. And when you pass the class, you won't have to keep repeating the problem. Some of y'all don't understand. God is trying to teach and train and elevate you. You see nothing in the natural, but you've got to open your eyes to see God. And some of the things that God sees as literally nothing, you think are all that valuable. God doesn't hold any value in a car. He doesn't hold any value in a fine house. He doesn't hold any value in just you having a whole pile of excess money. The world will look at that and think of that and, oh, this is just everything. God looks at it and said, that stuff going to wither with the wind. So when you understand the difference between something and nothing, and depending upon how your vision is, whether it is worldly or natural, and it is interesting what Elijah did. He opened the eyes of those who were with him and blinded the eyes of those who were against him. It flipped. And his servant could see all of the angels and everything, and the army were blinded. They could see nothing. And then Elisha took them to the city that Israel held. And the king of Israel actually addressed Elijah as, oh, my master. He understood who was in control. The king of Israel said, oh, my master. And then he said, what shall I do with him? Shall I kill him? Elijah said, no, don't kill him. Throw him a banquet. What the world would have said in that case, if these folk coming to kill me, and I got the opportunity to kill them, they dead. That was worldly wisdom. Godly wisdom said, throw them a banquet. Feed them. And all of the soldiers who ate of that banquet, and then all of the soldiers who went back to the king of Syria, the Bible says, and they never attacked Israel again. Wisdom will be able to where you can take your enemies and show them a different way. But that's a different vision. That's a spiritual vision, not a worldly response. And people, we constantly have to struggle against worldly, fleshly responses. There are sometimes I respond out of a heavenly wisdom. But there are sometimes I just respond out of dirt. I just respond out of flesh. I just respond out of emotion. It just rises up in me. Oh, sometimes you just respond, you just cut the food. And the thing about it, understand this. Elisha would have been right and justified to kill them because they were coming to kill and capture him. He would have been fully justified to kill somebody who was going to kill him. But he said, no. They slapped me on one cheek. They tried to imprison me. I will throw them a banquet. This is spiritual vision, and it is different from worldly vision. The world can see in a spiritual situation nothing. And a spiritual vision can see in a worldly situation nothing. And when you have done what God has told you to do, I have seen a host of angels twice in my life. The second time that I saw the host of angels was actually when I finished the 24-hour MBA series. It was something that God had told me to do. It cost me a whole lot of money, a whole lot of time, a whole lot of effort. We did for an entire year, on the second and fourth Tuesday at 8 o'clock in the morning, a business training. The auditorium here was full of business. So we did this thing for a whole year, 24 90-minute sessions. And when I finished it, I walked out of this hall through these double doors, and I literally saw a host of angels lining the hall, clapping. I actually lost money on it because not only did I not get paid, I paid the church for using the sanctuary. I fed the folk breakfast every morning and then gave the people the $70 that they paid, gave all of them their money back. So I lost money by natural vision. But by spiritual vision, see, by natural vision, I gained nothing. But by spiritual vision, and if anybody had been walking with me down that hall, they wouldn't have seen anything. And if I'd have told them, y'all see these angels here, they might have gone down a straitjacket for me. By natural vision, what was seen was totally opposite of what was seen by spiritual vision. One vision sees nothing, the other sees everything. One vision sees everything, the other sees nothing. And it depends upon where your vision is located, where you will see. So number one is simply when you see what the world cannot see. And number two is when there is nothing you desire. True contentment comes when you are happy with what you have. Now, Buddha, and I generally never quote Buddha because Buddha is another philosophy. Buddhism technically is not a religion, it's a philosophy. Buddha never claimed to be a god. He was a man. He told everybody he was a man. He was born of a king. He was a prince. He left. He lived among the people. He went from the lowest to the highest because he wanted to experience everything. Buddha never claimed he was a god. Folk put him in that position. He never said so. But the point is this. In the philosophy that Buddha developed, he says this, and it is fundamentally the root of the Buddhist philosophy. There's the Eightfold Path. There are the Four Noble Truths. I've studied all of it. But the root of it is this. When you boil down what Buddha said, the root of Buddha, of what he said is this. He says, all suffering and pain comes from desire. All suffering and pain comes from desire. Because I want something that I don't have. All suffering and pain comes from desire. So when you can get to the point when there is nothing that you desire, and I preached a sermon on this years ago. My son George said in his last message, he was listening to a message that his daddy preached, and it's interesting because it kind of embodies what I want to do. He said, I was listening to a sermon that my daddy preached before I was born. And one of the things that I have envisioned for this ministry is that we will be preaching after we have left these bodies. And people will still be listening, and people will still grow. That's why I tell them, don't tell anybody what year it is, because people are going to be listening to us in the year 3028. Don't tell anybody what year it is, what season it is, because the vision is the stuff we're talking about is eternal. So when my son George, he says, my daddy, I was listening to a sermon my daddy preached before I was born. And I believe this sermon was before George was born. But it's called The Four Levels of Want. It's sermon 5153. Go and listen to that sermon, 5153. But Buddha says the root of all pain and suffering is desire. So when you can learn to stop just wanting so much, we're on this treadmill of wanting more and more and more and more, and we're never satisfied. You make one level of money, you want another level of money. You get one house, you want a bigger house. You get one car, you want another car. You get one set of clothes, you get one wife, you want two. You understand what I mean? It just never ends. So your desires never end. And when you don't learn to become content with what you have, you stay in this constant state. Now, I am not saying that it is not beneficial for you to want to advance. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is if you get to a point where you are never satisfied, you live in a constant state, especially when it comes to material things. Now, spiritual advancement is entirely different. Intellectual advancement is entirely, but with material stuff, you're just on a treadmill that you will never be satisfied. And you got sometimes these men who are multi-billionaires, Bill Gates, the richest man in the world, and Jeff Bezos passed him, and Elon Musk passed him, and each one of them vying. I remember when Michael Jackson's day, each one of them vying, trying to see who was number one. And all this stuff keeps you in a state of pain and suffering when you're number two. Now, when you're number one, you're fine, but it can't be but one number one. So when you get to be number two, Because people used to compare Prince with Michael. And they would say, Prince, you number 2. Now, Prince was sitting, and see, from our vantage point, when we were in the music business, Prince selling all these millions of records. He doing super, but as far as Prince was concerned, I'm number 2. And Michael number 1. How come I can't be like Mike? Some of y'all in misery because you want to be like Mike. Or somebody else you see and you want to be like them. And you got to be you. You got to be what God told you to do. Don't try to be what somebody else is. You got to be content with what God has given you. You're jealous of other folk. Well, you're jealous of their hair. You're jealous of their skin. You're jealous of their nose. You're jealous of all this stuff. You can't do it. Well, you can't do somebody. But anyway, you will still not, even when you put on you some more hair, you're still not satisfied. So the thing is, we've got to learn to be content with what God has given us when there's nothing to desire. And that's one of the reasons I was so content. I said, Lord, I'm thankful for what you have given me. And it doesn't mean that I'm not missing some stuff, because I am according to my vision, but not according to God's. God said, boy, I've given you everything you need. And he's given you everything you need. You just want more stuff. You just want something different. You want more, but he's given you everything you need to do what you need to do. James 1:4 says this, but let patience have her perfect work, that ye may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing. Wanting nothing. Wanting nothing. When you can get to that point, you're going to be content. When you got everything and when you reckon, and see, one of the big differences between that level of contentment is the difference between an attitude of thankfulness versus an attitude of requesting. When you have an attitude of thankfulness, there's a contentment that comes, thank you, Lord, for what you've given. Thank you, versus, Lord, can you give me this? Can you put me right here, Lord? Can you open this door for me? There's a difference. When you move into an arena of thankfulness, your contentment will grow. 1 Timothy 6:7 says this, for we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain, not 95%, it is certain you will carry nothing out. So all of the stuff that we're hustling to accumulate, Timothy said it is certain you're not going to take it with you. It is certain that you can put it in a bank that's next to the cemetery and sleep next to it, but you can't take it with you. Timothy says it is certain you will not take it with you. And number 3, you're content when your treasure is in heaven. My focus now is the accumulation of treasure, but it is the accumulation of treasure in heaven. Because this time, and I believe in taking care of my body. I really do. I want to take care of this temple till I can reach the lifespan that God has promised in full, vibrant health of 116. But this going to turn to dust. And that time goes by in a flash. Even at 116, I've got 51 years and 1 month left. That time goes by in a flash. It'll be gone before I realize it. And this body, no matter how much care and focus I put on it, will turn to dust. And it'll be eaten by worms. So I recognize all of this stuff. I was with my son George. We were in Orlando, and I was trying to advise him. He wanted to get some fancy tennis shoes. And I said, son, do you realize that you'll outgrow those shoes? Your feet, you're still growing? He's about 12 or so at the time. I said, your feet are still growing? I said, oh, you'll outgrow those shoes and put those shoes. I said, do you realize those shoes will eventually do nothing but turn to dust? And George looked at me as we were walking, and he said, Daddy, he said, all this stuff going to turn to dust. I said, woo! George been deep for a long time. He said, all this stuff is going to turn to dust. All this stuff is going to turn to dust. But Jesus in Matthew 6:19, don't store up treasures here on earth where moths eat them and rust destroys them, and where thieves break in and steal. Store your treasures in heaven where moth and rust cannot destroy, and thieves do not break in and steal. Wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will be also. So the third thing of nothing. Don't put your value here on earth. Now, this is not, don't get it all twisted. This is not to mean that you don't try to use wisdom in your resources, because the Bible also says a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children, for his grandchildren. So a good man is going to leave stuff here in the earth for his inheritance and for his children's children. But that stuff is going to fade. And sooner or later, all of the earth will pass away. But if you store your treasure in heaven, and I even knew years ago exactly how much I had. I remember in the middle of Mountain Wings, and I was working and focusing on Mountain Wings, and I wouldn't take money for it, and I was just focusing on helping people. And I had a merchant account, which is a credit card account for people who would make purchases or buy T-shirts or that kind of thing. And I remember looking at it one day, and the account had $55 trillion in it, 55 trillion and some odd million. And so I contacted the people. I said, y'all have made a huge error here. My account is saying it's got $55 trillion. So I'm talking to the support person. He said, no, that's accurate. I said, look, man, do you know how much $55 trillion? I said, look, man, the whole GNP, the gross national product of the U.S., all of the whole GNP at the time was less than $4 trillion. I said, man, you're trying to tell me I got 14 times as much as all of the money generated in the U.S. I got 14 times that sitting in that mountain. I said, that cannot be. Y'all have made a huge error in my account. It's going to mess up some stuff. You need to figure this. The man said, no, that's right. And I could not get this. I said, well, okay. I could not get this support person to understand that $55 trillion in my account was utterly and totally ridiculous. And I was just sitting there, to be honest, I remembered it just as I was sitting there laughing. I was just sitting there laughing. And I said, this man's just stupid as he can be. Can't understand. 55 trillion is no way possible. Now maybe a business account could have had 55 million. That's possible. But even Apple, which had the largest cash deposit, they only had 85 billion. They only had 85 billion. 55 trillion is 55,000 billion. So that's how much that is. So it was just totally and completely, I'm just sitting there just laughing. I'm laughing at the support man. I'm laughing at the figure in the account. And then I hear God speak. That is your heavenly bank account. And I stopped laughing. We need to focus on putting our treasure in heaven. And when you've got treasure in heaven, there is a contentment that will flow and fall on you. When you follow God, he will give you vision that the world cannot see. When you are thankful for what you have, and when you focus on putting your treasure in heaven, you will find that nothing on this earth can take your contentment. But you cannot use this earth's vision, because the earth's vision will see nothing where God is. The earth's vision will constantly have you trying to get more and more and more. And the earth's vision will have you putting all of your treasure on earth. God's vision takes you to a whole different parameter. And the world will say, that's nothing. And God will say, that's everything. I thank you for joining us today at Brothers of the Word. You can go to brothersoftheword.com and you can listen to this entire series on contentment absolutely free of charge. Thank you for joining us today at Brothers of the Word, because, brother, you need the Word. From Brothers of